Hello everyone, good morning and welcome to the Girls in Property podcast. So today I've got somebody very special I'd love you to introduce you to, who is Ella Attrill. Hi Ella.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm such a fan of the podcast, so I'm so happy to be here.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure. I was literally saying to you, wasn't I, just before we started the podcast, how amazing the calibre of women at the moment are that is coming on this podcast. And it's just so fantastic to hear from different people in the industry, absolutely smashing it. And you absolutely are no exception to that. So thank you for giving me your time today.
Oh, well, thank you so much. I feel very honoured from that, didn't you? And to be part of that high calibre of people that are coming through right now.
Oh, I love it. So as you know, because I know you're a fan of the podcast, we always start off the podcast with something that we are celebrating at the moment. So do you want to talk about something you are celebrating right now?
So from this week, we've just had our latest project go live. So we just done a flip basically on a 4-bedroom bungalow. And this one's such a good juicy deal and it's been so straightforward. So it's really nice to get that live. So I'm celebrating that this week.
Wow, that's amazing. That's a huge thing to celebrate. Massive. And of course, I'm going to be asking you more questions about that bungalow project as we go through the podcast, but it sounds fabulous. What am I celebrating this week? Well, okay, so I've got an interesting one. So as many of the seasoned listeners will know, I'm obsessed with dogs. I have a massive obsession with them. Yeah, I love dogs. So it's still, so basically me and my partner are getting a dog this year. As people know, that's one of my goals for this year. And it's really tricky. We're both sort of self-employed, and I've wanted a dog since I was about 5 years old. And because of having a full-time job and because of now trying to build a business, there's never a right time. And when you think there's a right time, you make an excuse as to why there's not the right time. However, my partner decided, right, I'm going to throw her right in the deep end. So we are babysitting our friend's dog next week on Monday for a whole week. And he's like, there is a dog arriving at our house on Monday that you're going to have to babysit for a week. And I was like, wow. So it's a King Charles Spaniel that's arriving. So it's only little. His name is Bertie and he's about 5 years old and he's wonderful. So if you see me on Instagram, guys, this week with like a little King Charles Spaniel at the viewings, that's Bertie. So give Bertie a wave.
Oh, so cute. I've got a Spaniel myself. But yeah, I think we're going to see lots of dog spam from you next week, aren't we? It's a good way to try that out before you decide to make that commitment to having one yourself.
Well, I think he's trying to prove to me, because I think when I looked at my diary for the following week, my very first thought was, oh my God, how am I going to look after a dog for a week with my diary? And he was saying that's the whole point. You need to be ready for this. So I actually think what's going to happen is it's going to give me a real shift of energy and thought, where I think, oh, all of this work has to be done. I don't have time to go out for a walk. I don't have time to go and do this. But I'm going to have to be forced to give time to walk the dog, feed the dog, take the dog out. And it's almost going to prove to me that I do have time. So I'm hoping it's going to be a really positive thing and it doesn't go completely wrong and I don't lose my friend's dog. So watch this space, guys, and I will keep you posted.
No, honestly, I think that's why I've got my dog as well, because he does force me out into nature and all of that stuff. And I've got a horse as well. So equally, he does the same. Because otherwise you can just get stuck into work too much, can't you? And before you know it, the day's over and you've just been sat in your office.
Absolutely. So, so for people who don't know you, which I'm sure lots of people do know you, but people who don't, do you want to just introduce yourself? Let us know a bit about you, about what you're currently doing, maybe some exciting projects you've got coming up, and then we sort of take it from there.
Yeah, sure. So obviously, I'm Ella. I'm a property investor, developer, and property coach for women. I have been investing in property now for the last 6 years. And it kind of started by accident, to be honest. I was heavily pregnant with my daughter, and me and my partner, we bought our first house and renovated it and then added value to it. So we thought, well, why don't we just do this again? And at the time, that was how I thought that you made money in property. It was just either flip it, or if you had stacks of cash, you just dump it into buy-to-lets and earn, a few £100 a month from each. But then after doing some research and stuff like that, I came across the BRR strategy. So the next house that we bought, the intention was obviously to flip it, but then we were like, why don't we turn this into a 5-bedroom HMO? So that's what we did. We added a loft conversion and a bathroom downstairs. And then that we refinanced, pulled out all of our capital. And then from there, invested into training, and it just kind of exploded, to be honest. And we're on project 18 now of our own. In the middle of that, did some rent to rents and sourcing and commercial to residential conversions, more BRRs, more HMOs, essays, literally all of the things. So it's been a busy few years. But in terms of projects that we've got on right now, we've just had the bungalow go live, which I've obviously just spoken about. And we've got a 9-bedroom HMO in Harrogate that we're just finishing up as well. And then a few offers out and things in the pipeline. So hopefully an 11 studio commercial to residential as well. So lots of things going on.
My goodness, you are busy, aren't you? So let me ask you a couple of questions then, if that's okay, about what you just said. So my first question is with was it 18 or 19 properties that you have personally?
18 projects that we've done, yeah.
18. So are those all in your personal name or limited company? How did you structure all of those?
So a couple are in personal names, one of the buy-to-lets and a personal house as well. And then the rest of them are all in limited companies. And to be honest, if I had the knowledge that I have now back then, I would have structured it differently, but also tax rules and stuff have changed over that time. So they're kind of scattered through a few companies that I'm now trying to pull back together again because of tax reasons. You know, it's all changed now, hasn't it? So yeah, most of them are in limited companies, basically.
Gosh, it must be so much to just try and keep an eye on all of them. Absolutely. And are they predominantly therefore HMOs and buy-to-lets? Do you have any essays, or what's the profile like?
Only one buy-to-let. The rest of them have been HMOs, essays, dabbled into social housing a little bit as well. And then now looking towards assisted living longer term as well.
Wow, so you really kind of have got an eclectic mix of everything. I feel like you've tried everything now, as it were, which is fabulous.
Sorry, we've flipped quite a few of them on as well. So it's really been just a mixture of everything. And I think like when you first get into property, it's really easy to get that shiny penny syndrome, isn't it? It's like, oh, that person's doing this thing. And so you want to go down that route. And we did really try a lot of the things, but now we've got more of a vision and a structure and a focus on the development side of things, and rinse and repeat and what we know works and what we're good at. And that's happened over time, you know.
Absolutely. And I'm just trying to put myself in your shoes, where you learnt about the BRR strategy, which for listeners is buy, refurbish, rent, refinance. And you took on this property and decided to do the loft conversion, put a bathroom in, as you said. Because you had never done that before, I presume that was your first time ever doing it. How did you feel going into that project? Like, how did you know who to trust? How did you know what they was like? How did you know the systems, or this has to be done first and this? Like, talk me through that experience for you.
Yeah, I mean, I think anything new that you do is just a massive learning curve, isn't it? So we were quite lucky that the HMO officer in our area was really helpful. So she came out and we bought the property. We knew we were going to flip it anyway. So we always had different exits without even knowing that multiple exits was a thing back then. So she kind of walked us around and told us what we would need. And then my partner, he was a plumber for 10 years before he got into property and before he did car sales and stuff. So he had a lot of on-site knowledge as well. So combined with all of that, we were kind of able to pull the pieces together. And we knew how to flip properties. Well, we did one flip before, so we thought we knew what we were doing. So it didn't feel that daunting, to be honest, because I think we already did it once already. So it wasn't too bad at the time.
I love that. You're like, yeah, loft conversion, not that bad. It was fine. I suppose you just learn, don't you? You learn as you go, make mistakes and, go from there, really. One of the other things you've just mentioned is the fact you, of course, did it with your partner. So are you in business with your partner in that case, your sort of life partners and business partners?
Yeah. So we have done everything together in property. So we've got very different skill sets. I think like he's very good hands-on and I'm very good on the business side and numbers and all of that. I used to work in finance, so like numbers for me are everything to make sure everything works properly.
Oh, that's handy.
It's definitely handy. It's done me well. So yeah, I think we've got good complementary skills and it's really helped the both of us to, and also to like stay in our lanes a little bit as well. Because initially we were like crossing over each person's responsibilities, but now we know what we're good at and we do that well. So I think that works.
I love that. And I'm going to go slightly off piste here just on this section because we're discussing it. So I'm seeing now actually a lot of couples working together. And also I'm beginning to mentor quite a few couples as well who are just starting out in their journey. How would you, I'm always curious on this one. Like, how do you have it defined where you're like, okay, now we're going to speak to each other as business partners. Now we're going to make a rule that we're going to have dinner together as a couple, so we're not going to talk about business. Like, how does that work? Because I think listeners for a couple would be really interested in kind of advice about, well, I'm in a relationship with someone I'm also in business with. I mean, what is that genuinely like?
I think there's pros and cons. Like I speak to some of my friends and they say to me, how do you work with your partner day in, day out? And it is, it's like anything in life, isn't it? It's a juggle and you've got to balance things. But I think because we know now a bit more like what we are good at, so it tends not to cross over too much. And at the moment, he's pretty much on site all the time. So I'm like doing my thing and we don't, we're not in each other's company all the time. So, yeah, I think it's just figuring out that balance really. And when we go out for date nights and stuff, we say like, we're not talking about work because otherwise it's just constantly talking about this property, that property and what we're going to do in this situation and la la la. And it can just take over your whole life. So I think it's just having those clear boundaries in place and carving out couple time as well. Because otherwise, it just ends up you working and talking about work all the time, which isn't ideal because we've got a daughter as well, so we need to carve out that family time and all of that.
This is the thing, you're a mum as well. We get so many mums and they're all like, I don't know about you, but I speak to quite a few mums where we speak about the fact that you want to be the best person in business that you can be for yourself, but then you want to be the best mum and you feel almost guilty when you're giving, like, am I giving enough time to the business? Am I giving enough time to my child? And then you almost feel very torn and you almost feel that you're actually not giving enough time to either of them in a way. And that's, I spoke to Ella about this when Ella Hardy came on, because she's also got 2 young children. And it's so fascinating to hear from mums to say, you want to have your own identity, but you want to make sure you have playtime as well. So that also must be quite tricky for you as well.
Yeah, I think it was probably worse when she was younger because she's 6 now. So she's at school. So there's a lot more balance there. But especially when we were first starting up the company and everything, she would be coming to viewings and she'd be crying and stuff. Like, it wasn't glamorous. It wasn't the stuff you see on Instagram. But you just have to make it work. You know why you're doing it and what the future holds. It's completely transformed our life and our lifestyle. So when you see that progression, you know that those sacrifices is worth it. And I think we've got quite a nice work-life balance with her actually. Like in the summer, she didn't really have any childcare. She was just at home. I would work, I'd schedule my day so that I could be with her and my partner would do the same. So actually we've kind of built a business around her as well, which we wouldn't have been able to do in corporate jobs. So it swings and roundabouts. It's what you make it, I think. And, you're never going to get perfect. There's days where I'm absolutely bossing it. And I'm like, what was I thinking about last week when I was thinking, oh my God, this is too much. But, it's just, I think you've just got to give yourself some grace and just work with what you've got, basically. Otherwise, you end up punishing yourself for something that you can't necessarily control. And it's all for the greater good. So.
Yeah, and every day's different, isn't it? One day could be one day could be another. Absolutely. So.
Especially
She's what, sorry?
As women, because we've
Oh, it's
got
women.
thrown into the mix.
Honestly, we could talk about that for hours and hours. Absolutely, 100%. It's always tricky. So in terms of the bungalow then, because I've heard lots about the bungalow and I've seen lots of stuff on Instagram, I'm so excited to talk to you about it. So do you want to kind of give us like a little bit of an idea of the project that the bungalow actually was, and like what you got it for, maybe what you've transformed it into, and what the exit strategies are?
Yeah, of course. So in terms of this project, it's been really straightforward. Like we've basically bought the bungalow, bought it. Well, I say it's pretty straightforward. The actual purchase of the project wasn't that straightforward. We got it pre-auction, off market, but under auction terms still. So we put in an offer before the auction actually went live, which was accepted, but bought it with bridging. So we still had 28 days to complete. But obviously with bridging, you've got to have your valuations done and everything like that. So you're kind of tied to their timeline as well. So it was a bit stressful getting that one over the line. However, it was such a good deal. We bought it for 325 and it was genuinely below market value. So the bridging company valued it at 400, which is its actual market value, which meant that we got more on the front end in terms of funds. So in terms of putting money into the deal, we actually only needed £40,000 and it was 325 grand. So very low entry into it. So it was a pretty straightforward refurb, to be honest. The refurb cost around 100k. We basically ripped it all back to brick. We put a extension on the back, which was done under permitted development, so no planning or anything like that needed. Lovely roof lantern, modernised everything. It's very clean lines. It's white and grey, but nice kitchen, flooring, all of that stuff. And it's now up for sale for 700. So there's about a 200k profit margin in there for us, which is great considering we only bought it in August. And we've not had to go through any sort of licensing, which you would do with HMOs or, any we had building regs, but it wasn't like you would need for commercial to residential conversion, for example. So in terms of like red tape and everything, it's been such a breeze compared to some of them. So yeah, really, really lovely project. I'm very happy about that one, and it should do us really well. So
amazing. So when we're thinking about sort of the value that you added from where it was to where it is now, what do you think's really defined the increase in the valuation? What did you do to the property to get that?
I think the circumstances of it being under auction, it puts a lot of people out because they think that they can't get funding for it as quickly. But we bought it with bridging, so it's definitely possible. It's just a bit stressful. And so I think that's why it was the price it was. It was also off market, so we weren't bidding against other people. So there was the margin there as well. It's also in Surrey, so it's an area which has a lot of higher value properties and good demand. Bungalows just seem to have a rule of their own. I don't really understand it myself because you essentially have half a house and one floor, but they seem to demand a really high price. And the comparables were in the area. So we spent, a good chunk of money on making it a high-end refurb. So that's what added the value, to be honest. It wasn't really anything, special, if I'm honest about this one. Like, oh, we added this. It's more just adding the extension and stuff like that has added that value a little bit more, but it's more area. It was purchased at the right price with enough margin in it, and the comparables were there. So it made sense and it was a good deal.
Love it. Fantastic. And do you know what? Sometimes that's what can happen when you do get yourself a good deal and, you do the numbers and the due diligence with it. So this one's going to be a flip, is it? You're going to flip this one. Yeah. Fabulous. And a quick question, actually, because people sometimes ask me this question. So they say, is it usually better to flip or is it better to do a BRR strategy? Or does it depend on, like, numbers could look different? How do you define whether you keep something or flip something?
So with any project that I look at, it has to work for multiple things. So I always have a primary strategy that we want to exit out onto, but like for this bungalow, it's not necessarily for something I want in the portfolio because it could probably only be a buy to let, and that's just not what we do. We want to get higher cash flow in properties, and so it would be a bit of an anomaly, as it were. So yes, it was always going to be a flip, but the numbers worked so that we could have refinanced it and it would have still been a buy to let with no money in. So it would have actually paid out 26k because of the numbers. So, like, as I said, any deal that I look at, it needs to have multiple exits. And that's the way that I teach my ladies in my academy as well, because I've been in that situation before where I've got on the wrong side of a deal, and or like prices have gone up, or and all of that thing, the stuff that you can't control essentially. And you don't want to put yourself in that position. It's stressful. Like, you need to have another way out, and you don't have the control over all of that. It's determined by market, it's determined by material prices, COVID, for example. Like, that's, nobody saw that coming. So you have to have an exit strategy. I'd say have a primary one, and then you've got to have other exits after that as well.
I think that's great advice. I always say that to people as well. I'm like, what is the exit strategy? Especially if you're bridging, because bridging can be bridging's quite expensive. And obviously if you go over the term, it gets a bit hairy, let's just say. So always have those exits. Absolutely. Fabulous. I love that bungalow. I'd be so fascinated to see the journey. So you're saying it's actually on the market now this week?
Yeah, went live Monday, I think it was. So yeah, you can go and check it out.
Wow, so fingers crossed for you, like that it goes really, really well. That would be absolutely amazing. Oh, fab. And then in terms of other projects that you've got on at the moment, I know you mentioned in regards to you also, so alongside, I love saying this, alongside flips and buy, refurbish, rent, refinance and service accommodation and HMOs, you're also thinking, or actually, no, sorry, you actually have done commercial conversions as well.
Yeah. So I've done 2 so far. Excuse me. One of them was very ambitious when I look back over the journey. We bought an 8,000 square foot office building with 2 retail shops underneath. So we bought this just as we were going into lockdown. So that presented a lot of challenges. It was, a large building we'd just done our HMO before that. So this is a completely different kettle of fish. There's so much more red tape with commercial to residential conversions. And then obviously the country went into lockdown. So the challenges were getting the, even surveyors and stuff like that to go out to the property. We were trying to get a structural engineer there for weeks and weeks and weeks, and an asbestos surveyor to go and see it. But we couldn't even get the contractors to quote properly before that had happened. So it was like, and it was on a bridging loan as well. So we ended up going over the bridge. The contractors eventually did start in the September, and we bought it in the March. They were okay, and they were running with it for a while. We had a project manager there as well, so he was on site. And then everything started to slow down, and we were like, what's going on? Let's go and see what's happened. And they eventually ended up throwing the keys back at us and saying, we're going under, sorry. So we had to literally pull it out of the bag. And this is why I say you need multiple exits, because it started off as an all money out deal. And then as all of this stuff happened and we went over the bridge and got penalties and all of this stuff, it obviously eats up into that margin. So we ended up having to sell that one. And we turned it into 6 apartments and 2 shops, and it's now cash flowing the guy between 5 to 8 grand a month. So it's annoying, but you have to do these things sometimes. So I classify that one as the one that taught me all the lessons. It's given me so much resilience, and I think it genuinely changed me as a person going through all of that stress and having to find solutions, because that's what property is, isn't it? Just finding, you have to be a good problem solver, and it definitely did that. So yeah, grateful for that in that sense. And we still made a little bit of money, just not what we wanted. But then since then, done another commercial to residential conversion. That was it's a duplex apartment above an estate agent's, and it was their office space before. So we bought it and then changed it into a 4-bedroom. It's essentially like a house on top of the estate agents, but with no garden. And that's in Weymouth. So it's in a really good SA location, and it is so lucrative in the summer, and it still ticks along nicely in the winter as well. So yeah, that was a really good one as well.
Fabulous. So just remind me again. So that one, the Weymouth service accommodation, what did that used to be?
It was just office space above the estate agent. So it was owned by them. They own the whole building. They split out the first and second floor above their shop, or their retail shop bit. And then they sold that part of it to us. And then we converted.
Wow. And just out of curiosity, I've never done a commercial conversion. I'd love to do one. That's on my cards, as well as land development as well. Both of those are on my cards for the future. So what sort of planning changes, or any, did you need to do if it was originally the office turning it into a service accommodation? What was the process for changing that?
Well, you can actually do it under permitted development. So you just need to do the change of use. Back then, they had just changed the rules, because you never used to be able to do that. But it was one of their incentives at the time to get more spaces occupied, essentially. So yeah, just done under permitted development. You submit the form to the council. They do come out and they do their checks. They check for height, like on highways. They check noise, and to make sure that it's suitable to be residential in that particular area. Which this one, it's, yes, there was retail below, but a lot of them had been converted into residential already. So yeah, pretty straightforward, to be honest, with permitted development, and really lucrative actually, because there's less competition, and people think that you have to do planning for these things, but you don't, which is great for us and as investors.
Well, you've just proved that to me, because I've never done a commercial conversion. My first question to you was a planning question, and you actually just said, well, actually, no, there was no, you do it under PD. So I was like, oh, I didn't know that. So I've just learned something new today as well, which is fantastic. So you're right. I suppose there's less competition. Of course, this is quite a current podcast which is going to go out, because obviously they announced the budget stuff as well, literally yesterday, talking about the multiple dwellings. And that they were going to be getting rid of the tax sort of benefits on that. So that's going to be really interesting, I think, for people within the commercial conversion world going forward. In regards to that, there are going to be some changes, as it were. So yeah, always talking about current affairs on the podcast.
Yes, of course. Yeah, I have seen what's been changing. But I think, like, if you have, say, a multi-unit block, I don't think that's going to really impact you too much, because you'd be paying one lot of stamp duty. And like, the likelihood is, from an investment point of view, you would be wanting to buy something with freehold and then splitting out the titles yourself. So it shouldn't affect that in terms of investment. So I don't think it should be a problem for com to resis if you're doing it that way and just buying freehold.
Love that. And I love the attitude towards it. You're like, yeah, I heard, but because lots of people are talking about it at the moment. Lots of people are obviously speaking about it, saying how bad it is and stuff. And I love how you've just given a breath of fresh air on it to go, well, actually, if you think about it from this way, it's not that bad because of these reasons, which I love. Fab, I've never heard anyone talk about commercial to residential on the podcast before. And I think what's fabulous is to try and get more women into that world, because I think sometimes they do see it as quite a daunting, and I do as well. I say women, me as well, see it as quite a daunting thing where it's these massive offices or massive blocks or skyscraper. And you're like, oh God, I've got to do something with this. But actually you're here saying, do you know what? It is possible. Anything's possible. And you can do and it could even be if you had a garage, or is that right? Could you have like a garage or a small shop? You could just turn that into an SA, couldn't you? It could be anything.
Essentially, with a shop, it depends on what its current use class is, and whether it's on like a street, which is all retail, whether or not you would have to, you'd have to go through planning for that. So it's kind of subject to the area really as well. But like what you were saying about commercial to residential being a bit overwhelming, I mean, there's different scales, isn't there? Like the one that we did in Blackpool, that was that huge building, it was definitely a massive leap of faith for us at the time. I probably wouldn't recommend people starting there because it's a lot to get your head around. But like the one in Weymouth, that was only one unit. So yes, you still have a bit more red tape, but it doesn't have to be so overwhelming. You can just do like one unit above a shop and still make an incredible profit margin, and you're not then bidding against other people. Say, like, you know, if you're going for a house, then you've got more people wanting to do the same thing as you, whereas commercial, there's a lot more opportunity there. You've only got to walk down the high street on a lot of towns through the UK, look above shop level, and you'll see that a lot of them are just run down, aren't they? So we need like people to be doing this a lot more, I think, so that we can start to utilise our town centres a little bit more, because they're all just dying at the moment.
Absolutely. Have you been to Bournemouth recently, by any chance?
Not recently. No, I used to have an SA there, but I've not been there because I've moved up to Harrogate now, so it's like 5 hours from me.
All the Bournemouth listeners will be nodding their heads right now going, I know what she's about to say. Bournemouth High Street is dying really badly. So all the shops are closing, all the sale signs are up. I think what the issue is in our area, and I don't know what your opinion about this from a commercial standpoint is, because again, it's not my area of expertise. I think they're all not freehold. I think they're lease, and they've all got the leasehold on it. And I think that's what's causing the issue at the moment. And I also don't know if some of the council actually own quite a few of them, or something's going on there, and that the council are in problems as well. But I know for a fact, because I know one of the shopkeepers on one of the properties, and he says this one is a leasehold, as it were. So do you think that that could also be a reason why people don't necessarily do commercial to resis in certain areas because of those restrictions?
Potentially, yeah, potentially. I was looking to buy a guest house in Weymouth, and the council actually owned those buildings as well. But what you can do is get them to assign the lease to you, so you can just buy it leasehold and, you know, do it yourself still. I personally wouldn't really want to do that because I want to get the freehold on it. But I think, like, with these things, you've kind of got to trace it back to, like, where can you find a solution? Like, who actually does own it? If it is the council, are they incentivized to keep it, or can you approach them to see if there's something that can be done there? Yeah, because if the council is, especially if they're in trouble, they're not going to want to hold on to stock that's not actually cash flowing them, or, you know, creating money within that industry. So yeah, like, follow the money is what I say. Just go and find a solution. And I think you have to be a bit of a detective with property, don't you? Like, figure out who owns it. And that's the exciting bit sometimes. Like, right, I'm going to find out who owns this property, and then we're going to have a chat and talk to the neighbours and all of that as well.
You can go down some really far rabbit holes with that, though, can't you? Like, if you've got like a abandoned building, you're like, who owns this? And then you're like, oh, and then the neighbour comes out and goes, what are you doing trespassing? And you're like, oh, I'm just getting some information. And they give you all sorts of information about the property. You're like, wow, this was an interesting conversation. So
Yeah.
I'm the same. I love the detective work. It's so much fun. So then talk to us about Fempowered then. So Fempowered is your academy, is that correct? Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I started coaching 2 years ago now, and initially it was one-to-one. Again, a little bit by accident. It was just people reaching out to me asking for advice, and then I was working with a coach at the time, and she was like, why don't you charge for it? So I was like, okay. That's what I did. And then from there, I really, like, the people that I was coaching, I was like, do you know what would be really good now is to have a community so that they can all interact together. So then the Empowered Property Academy was birthed from that idea. And that's been going, we're in the second year now. So yeah, I just absolutely love it. Like, for me, it fills my cup up to see them changing their lives and going down in, or getting educated in property, and then actually having property themselves and seeing the benefits of, like, you know, the cash flow coming in and all of that stuff. Like, it really does fill my cup up. So yeah, essentially that's the Fempowered Property Academy. So they have their own community. We do group calls. They also offer like a deal analysis service. So I check some deals over for them if they want to propose something. just to make sure that they've got that support there. Because I've done all, the big training myself, but I always felt like I was in big rooms, didn't really have that much accountability. And I'm not it got me where I am today. So I don't want to badmouth it at all. And obviously did some good things for me, but I just felt like having like a smaller community where you've got a lot of support. And also, I think women, we need to be coached a little bit differently than men as well. And a lot of the coaching industry has come over from the US, and that's eked out into the property training space as well. And it's very toxic masculinity sometimes, not all the time. I don't want to say like that as a general sweeping statement, but I just think I've coached men and I've coached women, and I can see the differences in our personalities and our risk appetite. Like we were talking about earlier, hormones, all of that plays such a part in it. So we can't always constantly be on. We have to almost harness those times throughout our cycle where we've got more energy and, we're feeling like superwoman. And then the days where we're not, it's like, well, now you need to do other things so that we keep moving and we don't shame ourselves into always taking that action. And then when we can't sustain it, it's then becomes a problem, and then we end up not being very nice to ourselves. So yeah,
I love that. I absolutely love that, and you're so true. Absolutely, and I'm sometimes quite guilty of this. And funny enough, I was actually speaking to some women this morning. So we do accountability coaching and mentoring as well, and we were just saying it's okay for some days that they're not okay days, to not try and change those days, to force yourself to almost have a good day. It's okay to say, do you know what, today I'm almost going to embrace the fact that today's a shit day, but that doesn't mean that tomorrow needs to be as well. Tomorrow could be a good day and you could wake up in a different way. And I was speaking to somebody who wasn't having a very good day on a particular day, and I spoke to her on that particularly bad day. And then the next day I checked in on her to check she was okay, and she's like, yeah, I'm bossing it today. Today I'm good. And I was like, exactly, that's okay. It's okay to have one day bad and then one day good. And all I say is try to have more good days than bad days. But you're so right. It's embrace them, and we're not superhuman. I say this all the time. We're always open. We're always real. I've even, as seasoned listeners know, I've even literally cried on this podcast when I did a solo episode because I was having a really bad day, and I thought, no, I'm not going to re-record it. I'm just going to put it out there because it's what's actually happening at this moment. And I think it's important to talk about it. Really important to talk about it and to push it forward, especially for mums who are also business entrepreneurs, people wanting to get into the property world but have a 9-to-5 job. And how do you balance your energy? That's another conversation I have all the time as well. So with your Fempowered group, actually, do you have people who are in 9-to-5s but also trying to get into the property industry? Have you got any of those?
Yeah, there's a real mix, to be honest. Some have quit their jobs and they're full-time in property. Others are working jobs and they're doing it around everything and around children as well on top of it. So I think you've got to be mindful of all of those things, haven't you? When you have and you're building a business, it's like, what do I actually have available and what is my capacity that I can handle without getting burnt out? Or where do I need to outsource? What are my strengths? What are my skills? Because I think as well with social media, it can be so easy to look at what you see on the outside, and you don't actually know what's going on with that person, or you can compare yourself to somebody that has a completely different lifestyle to you, and you're like, why aren't I doing those things? And it's like, well, of course you're not. You've got all of this other stuff going on. You've got to give yourself permission to be like, this is my lane. This is what I can do right now. And that's okay. And if you want to scale more, then it's out of your capacity. So you need to get somebody to help you to do that. So yeah, it's just understanding all of that, isn't it?
I love that. And what would you say? I'm just trying to think to myself, because we're both in a similar world with this, where we're both trying to build communities and we're both trying to build people together and create that sort of accountability and help. What would you say to people listening who maybe are starting out in their journey but aren't part of a community or a group or a mentorship or something like that, and they're trying to almost figure it out in a way on their own, or they're trying to just get by, do you have any advice that you would give to them?
I think it works for some people. It depends on your personality trait, doesn't it? Like some people are really self-motivated and they can read a book and they'll do everything in that book and they're good with that. I just found that I wasn't that kind of person. Like I need a coach to hold me accountable because I've always got so many ideas. So I need somebody to check in with to be like, have you done this thing? So if you're struggling on your own, then that's an indicator that you need to do something about it, and you need to find a space where you feel comfortable, and do that and have that community around you, because there's nothing really like it when you can see other people like doing the thing that you're doing, wanting to do, especially when you first start. It gives you that almost that mirror that you need for yourself to be like, well, they're doing it, so if she's doing it, why not me? And that can be really hard if you're on your own and you're just trying to figure it out, and you can probably get demotivated quite quickly. So what I would say to somebody in that, if they're in that space where they're like, I'm trying to do it, but I'm not getting anywhere, it's like find the room that you feel like you fit in. And that's going to be different for like your client's going to be different from mine, and we'll have our thought, and that's cool. Like there'll be a room for you. You just got to find out where that is.
Do you know, that's perfect. Thank you for that. That was absolutely perfect. And what I say to people when they come and they speak to me to say, oh, I'm looking to work with somebody at the moment, and we have conversations and I do discovery calls, I always say the same thing to people, which is go and choose the person that you think resonates the most with your values and just resonates with you as a person. Because I think that if you're going to go down a mentoring route, you have to like each other as well. You know, I've been mentored before by people that I don't like, and it doesn't go very well because I just don't agree with their values. And if you don't agree with their values, I think, well, that's the first step. So I think if you're looking for a group, or you're looking for accountability, or if you're looking for one-to-one, I think always look at the person that's in front of you and go, do I like this person? Do I trust this person? Do I believe that this person's going to be someone that's going to hold my values and me in sort of in respect of that? So that would be what I would say as well. But yeah, I think having an accountability partner for me was one of the biggest boosts that I had, because when you're on your own and you've only got your mind, I feel that you're always going to have almost that niggling doubt because you have nobody else to talk to about it or no evidence to base it on. Yeah. You almost are going to have that fear because that's the unknown is very fearful for everybody. And if you've never done something before, of course you're going to have fear because you have nothing in front of you to prove that it's going to work. Whereas if you have an accountability partner, and it could be somebody in exactly the same shoes as you that you meet at a networking event, even to say, hey, should we hold each other accountable? And even just having those meetups, coffees, nails, do whatever it is you want to do, I think would be really, really good. So I'm going to recommend everybody to get themselves in some way, shape or form, some sort of accountability partner just to keep them going, give them a bit of a shoulder or a kick up the bum when needed.
Oh, 100%. We all need that at times, don't we? With every area of life, I think. If we spend too much time on our own, then I think you can end up in those vicious thought pattern cycles, and then they end up being a self-fulfilling prophecy. So it's like you're telling yourself all this stuff, and then you actually end up not taking that action. So yeah definitely exactly. Get rooms.
And you spoke about social media. I'm going to do a whole episode on social media. I'm going to try and find the right person to get on the podcast to have a conversation with somebody about it. But I want to do a whole episode on it because so many people I speak to are like, on social media, like, oh, but this person's doing this and this person's doing this. And I'm like, use it in the correct way is my advice to everyone. Use it to inspire you and use it to push you, but never use it to ever compare yourself or to think that you are doing not as great as another person, because Ella, as you said, you never actually know what's happening behind the scenes with that person. So I'm gonna do a whole topic on that because I think it's really important to talk about social media actually. So that will be coming shortly. and then just to kind of finish off in true style, did you want to talk to us through a like a property disaster or property mishap that maybe you've had recently, and we can have like a laugh together? Well, hopefully it's funny.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the property disasters was the Blackpool project that I spoke about before, but every cloud has a silver lining, doesn't it? But in terms of disasters, I have a funny story actually. We did a HMO in Barnsley and we just finished the refurb. It was looking absolutely beautiful. It was like a lovely Victorian building. All the kitchen was kitted out. It was just gorgeous. I would have moved in myself, to be honest. And we got a phone call from the estate agent or the lettings agent who was managing our tenants. And they hadn't actually got anyone in there yet, so it was empty. And they said, oh, the tumble dryer is missing and so is the Hoover. And I was like, hang on, somebody's broken into the house, which they did. They like smashed through the door, got the tumble dryer and must have wheeled it down the road. And it was on a really, really busy street. It's like one of the main roads into Barnsley. So I was just picturing then these two, it must have been two people, couldn't have been one, carrying this tumble dryer down the road to obviously sell and do whatever. But that's the only things that they took, the tumble dryer and the Hoover. Random.
No, they just wanted to clean their house. That's all they wanted to do.
I don't know how they knew that it was empty. It just, obviously needed.
Did they? Okay, I've got a question for you. So you know how they smashed through to get into the property? Did they hoover up grass afterwards from the smash?
Not, no.
Oh my goodness! So what did you have to do? Did you have to go and buy another tumble dryer and Hoover? What did you do?
Yeah, we did. I was so annoyed. I was like, for God's sake, we already bought it once, but yeah, needed to be done. It's just one of those things, isn't it? So after that, in there.
I think that these are the stories I think that just make people. I really do, because you just can't write it. It's like, yeah, I set up a property, it was wonderful. Then I had the tumble dryer and the Hoover stolen.
It's just random. You think if they broke in, if somebody is, they must be quite desperate to try and take a tumble dryer. You'd think that maybe they'd try and stay in the property or anything like that, but no, let's just have the tumble dryer.
I absolutely love that. I love that. And like I said on a previous podcast, and I'll say it again, I think I need to either get a book together of all the property disasters of all of the guests I've ever had on, or just do a compilation podcast of just all of the property disasters in one, which I think I might do because they're so funny. They really are. And they're brilliant. They're absolutely brilliant. So thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate it. And Ella, if people wanted to get in touch with you, which I'm sure they're going to want to do, and sort of communicate and chat to you, where is the best place for people to find you?
So on Instagram, my handle is Ella_the property coach. And then my website is ellathepropertycoach.com. If you want to take a look at my property investment business, that is Della Estates. And I'm on Instagram and the website is on there as well.
Amazing. Love that. And you're coming to the Girls in Property retreat, aren't you, in April?
Yes. Yeah, I'm so excited. I can't wait to meet you in person, catch up with Sophie and just see everybody else as well. I know so many people going, so it's going to be a great event. Yeah,
honestly, it's fantastic. I'm so excited about it. And what's weird is it's actually round the corner now. And there is still, quite frankly, me being really transparent, there's still a lot of work to do. And I'm literally on my own here just going, okay, I can do this. I've got so much work, but it'll be fine. But I'm so excited about it. I'm excited to meet so many incredible women, like to get that many like wonderful women in a room together within the property and construction world, I think is something I'm going to say. I don't even know if it's been done before to the level that it's going to be. So I think it might be the first time it's ever happened. And I'm just going to put that out to the universe that I kind of made that happen. So I'm kind of a bit proud of that. So yeah.
Celebrate the girl. It's got to be done.
I am. I don't celebrate enough. So yeah, so it's going to be amazing. So we've got 3 tickets left when this episode goes out. So I have no idea who those 3 ticket holders are going to be, the lucky golden ticket holders. But
the golden tickets.
Guardian Chocolate Factory, golden ticket. But there are 3 tickets, so make sure that everybody grabs one. But yeah, and then if you want to find me, as always, I'm Athena Dobson_official. We are Girls in Property on Instagram and girlsinpropertypod@gmail.com. But Ella, thank you so much for giving me your time today. It's been so much fun. I'm sure everyone's going to love listening to your story, and hope to see you again. I'll see you in April.
Yeah, see you in April. Thank you so much. It's been amazing.
Thanks, guys. Have a good Monday. Take care. Bye.